Hi everyone. You might be a bit surprised with that picture that is there of Gukesh on top of it. Well, what we wanted to show is Gukesh on a roller coaster ride, taking us all through that roller coaster experience in his game against Lee Jun Hyeok. This happened at the eighth round of the Asian Games 2023, and Gukesh was up against the Korean player Lee Jun-hyuk and on board number one. So this match was like, India will win because Korea isn't that strong. However, the Korean players gave such a strong fight, and it started with this game. And I want to take you through this game to show the amazing stuff that happened. And I'll tell you about the match as the moves happen. So Lee Junyok is white. He opens with 1 e4, and Gukesh plays c5. Knight f3, knight c6, pawn to d4, takes e6 was played, knight c3, queen c7. It's all been, this is the Taimano variation. Close to 50,000 plus games have been played. Bishop e3, main line here, a6, knight takes c6. Well, this is relatively lesser played. The main move here is queen d2, but he plays knight c6, and now Gukesh takes back, b takes, and queen f3. This is the new idea which is taking a lot of taking people, making people very interested here, with queen g3 offering a queen trade, and when you take, it gets into an endgame where white is slightly better. But Gukesh would be well prepared. He goes here, queen takes g3, pawn takes, and now we are in this endgame, and Gukesh goes rook b8. Still all theory, bishop pawn to b3. Not many games have been played, like 13 games. Bishop b4, bishop d2, and now Gukesh goes d5. He plays bishop d3. And from this point onwards, Gukesh plays a couple of moves which lands him in a tough position. He plays e5, which is not the best. Um, f3 was a nice move by his opponent. And now comes a very, very dangerous move, a5. Why is this dangerous? Is because now this a5 pawn can get really weak. So for example, if I can play take, and a3, imagine that you take here. Already this is tough position because e5 and a5 both are hanging. So you can't take, you have to drop your bishop back. Let's say you go to bishop c5. Now in such a position, I can go g4 with the idea of g5. Also knight b5, which attacks a5. So all of these things put Gukesh under pressure. However, his opponent did not take advantage of it. He long castled. Gukesh pushed his pawn to d4, knight a4, and now played bishop e6. White had to play the move c3 here and would have had a very good position. But instead, he went bishop b4. Now, this was, I think, not a good move, because after knight c5, king e7, Gukesh already is slightly better. Bishop e2 played, and now king d6. I think knight d7 was also a very nice move. The main point is that if you take, I would like to take with the king, and then next plan is c5, maybe knight b6, and eventually try to go for c4. But he goes king d6, and after takes, now he could take with the king, but takes with the pawn. King b2 and rook a8, stopping a3, rook a1. And this is where things got a little complicated, because Gukesh could go rook a3, stopping a3, trying to bring the other rook, but then goes g4. Idea is g5. You can't play h6 because anyway g5 will come. And let's say if you go knight d7, I was thinking if rook h4, somehow this rook here is a bit trapped sort of for the defense of this pawn, because you can't even go h6. There's always g5. So that's the reason why Gukesh decided to play h5, which is very natural, because now his rook can move, but also now g4 is not possible. But the downside is that a3 becomes possible. So he goes a4, takes, 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 takes. g5, good move. King b2, h4, g4, and now rook a8. And here we come into this endgame. Very instructive position, and something for all of us to learn from. So here, of course, Gukesh wanted to win because firstly, he's higher rated, but also the match situation started to demand it because Prag was doing very well on board 2. He was winning. But Arjun was kind of in trouble on board 3, and on board 4, Hari Krishna was also in some difficulty. So that meant that Gukesh could not just hold on to a draw. So I think match situation plus the rating difference, all of it contributed to Gukesh fighting, and also the position looks like better for black, because if you can get your knight this way, you would be doing very well. King c5. And from this point onwards, Lee Jun Hyeok finds some series of only moves to keep the game going. So I will be asking you, what should white do here? White to move. Only move. Yes, the move is bishop c4. Now it's very important here not to fall for king b2 because it looks like the most natural move. But what is the move that black plays here to take advantage of this inaccuracy? d3. And now the king comes in this way and black is actually winning no matter what you do. Like if you take here, then I go king d4. If you go king c1, I go king e3. I'm just getting it. So he went bishop c4. Great move. The only move attacking this pawn. But more importantly, if now d3, then I have the move c3. If d2, then I go bishop e2, and I'm just in time for, even if he maneuvers the knight like this, then I am in time for defending everything. So that's why d3 does not work. Okay, so Gukesh went knight d7. Again, what's your only move as white here? Yes, king b2 is very important. It's natural, but you might be a bit tempted to take this pawn. But that doesn't work because after knight f8, now I'm threatening to go this way. So you go bishop f7 and you stop both the knight from coming ahead. But now comes the move d3. And this time c3 is impossible because d2, there's no bishop e2 to stop the pawn. So he has to take, and once he takes here, king d4, and this king is coming in and the h pawn is queening. So that is winning. King b2 was played, knight f8, and now again the only move to stay in the game, because as we know the threat is to come in here. So also you never want to get into a situation of zugzwang. What is the situation of zugzwang? Imagine you go king c1, I go knight g6, you go king d2, I go knight f4, you go bishop f1. Now the bishop is tied down, it has no moves. So that means it's tied down, and now you bring your king in and it's zugzwang. Because this king defends here, bishop defends here. If white could pass the move here, maybe he's fine, but that's not allowed in chess, and that creates a zugzwang. You have to move and I enter in. Okay, so c3 was played. King went back to b6. Actually, Gukesh might have wanted to go knight g6, but after bishop f1, knight f4, b4, king b6, this is a draw. It's fine for white. So Gukesh goes king b6 and he wants to play the pawn up to c5. And I think Lee Jun Hyeok should have, he goes bishop f1. Oops, sorry. Here, but he should have gone b4, because after c5 he gets the move b5. But bishop f1 was not so good because now Gukesh can go c5, and the only difference is that if you play b4 once again, the problem is after take this pawn is weak, and now after I can maneuver my knight and I can reach the position of zugzwang. So let's say king c2, knight f4, king b2, and now I go here, or maybe I can just push d3, king c3, and king c6. slightly waiting move, not go to b5 instantly, because then there's bishop d3 check. So first king c6, and then only when he moves away you go king b5, because now if he takes, this is winning for you. So somehow Gukesh got this chance because his opponent did not play here um, b4 instantly, but instead of taking this, he went for the move knight g6, which was a bad move, because now Lee Jun Hyeok played b5, and the position is now a draw. DC, BC, knight d7. But look at Gukesh's will to win. Okay, he goes here and he says, "Oh, I want to win the pawn." White says, "Sorry, you cannot win yet." Pawn to c4, king b4. He takes the pawn, and now king c4 here, and knight d4. It's still a draw, and but now Gukesh starts to get ambitious. King c6, stay here. It's a draw, but he plays the move king a5, trying to get in. Lee Jun Hyeok is now winning. King c5, knight b5, and he goes bishop b3, knight d4. And the problem of this position is that there are always threats like knight f3 followed by pawn push, or knight c2, knight c2, knight e1, and winning this. But still, white can actually hold it here, bishop d1, because now the threat is to come in and pick up these pawns. So you go knight b5 back, bishop b3. Actually, now Gukesh could have repeated. His opponent was agreeable to a draw. But the thing is that bishop c2 wins here. And at this point, actually, Anish Giri was in live commentary when we were doing, and he said this is a very difficult move to find. The reason for it is that you're going to put your bishop on d3. So for example, let's say you go knight c3 here, then king d6 is winning, because you lose these pawns and you don't have the d1 square, very important for the knight to jump there to e3. But if you play let's say here knight d4, then I go bishop d3, which means that even if you take and h3, my bishop can go back and stop this pawn. So bishop c2 somehow was very, very important move to be found. And after this, actually, it's all about putting the bishop here where it's perfectly placed. And this was not found by Lee Jun Hyeok. He played bishop b3. And now Gukesh went knight c3. Again, bishop c2 would win. But this was not found by white. And for example, bishop c2, knight e2 is the main line. Bishop d3, very important move. Knight f4 and bishop f1. So what has happened is that by all this maneuvering, white has saved everything, but the black king is cornered, and now the white king is ready to go and attack these pawns, and white wins in this position. In the game, he went bishop e6. This allowed Gukesh knight d1. It's equal now. Bishop c4, knight e3, bishop e2, knight takes g2, and he played bishop f1. Now I thought, okay, Gukesh will go knight f4, he'll go king d6, h3, take, knight takes, king takes. The game will end in a draw eventually. Okay, you have to be careful as black to try and hold this, because it's slightly complicated. You have to find knight g1 here, take, e6, knight e5. It's like the only line to draw the game, but it ends in a draw. But Gukesh saw a chance. He played h3. And this is where the will to win comes into the picture. Really, it was the game was real roller coaster. That's why this thumbnail there. King d6. He went king b4. Takes, king c3. He's coming with the king here to attack the bishop and promote the pawn. King here. King came in. e5. King came in. e6. King took. e7. Pawn push. Queen, queen. And this position is a draw, by the way. But you fight on. King f2, check. King here, takes. And check, king here. So even if both these pawns are lost, a knight and queen and knight cannot win against a queen, so it's a draw. But opponent was low under pressure, and this was a very nice move by Gukesh, because in a way he's boxing the white king. G5 was a mistake here. Any other move like bringing the king queen in should draw, but G5 was a mistake, and you can figure out how to win as black. Not an easy position, but a very nice one. So not knight f4 check, because after king h6 white is okay, but knight h4 check, king here, and now comes the very critical move, queen f7. And if you found this, pat yourself on the back. Knight f5 is a mate, you can't just stop it. Check, king h3, queen f6 check, takes, and Gukesh won here. His opponent resigned. The last pawn does not matter, because if g6, I have king h4 with a mate if you push the pawn, and so you can't make progress, and this is lost. So Gukesh managed to win this. It was a big relief for him and for Team India, because that point was very important. And what turned out is that Arjun also won, Hari also drew. So India won with a score of 3.5, and we beat Republic of Korea there. Also, Iran managed to beat Philippines with 3-1 margin. They were in some trouble at some point, like Maksudlu was equal and so was Daneshwar Bardia. So there was a small hope that India could win the gold if Iran drops a point, but it was not to be. In the women, we have Harika, Vaishali, Vantika, and Savita all winning 4-0 against Hong Kong, but China also won 4-0. So that means that Chinese women are in for the gold. Now, this is how the standings look like for the open, for the men. Here you see Iran is on 14 match points, so they are very comfortably in first position. India is 1 point behind at 13. Uzbekistan is on 12 and China is on 11. Now, if Iran draws their match today, then and India win, we will win the gold, because we have higher game points, that is 22 as compared to 20 for Iran. But the point is, Iran is facing today Korea, and I don't think that any upset is possible unless they play like what they did yesterday against India and finish off the games. But it's not so easy. While India has a pretty strong team in Philippines, 4 good players that they are facing. But I think a silver is very likely. Same thing in the women's section. China is leading by 2 points, and it is not very likely that China will lose their match. They are facing UAE, and India is up against Korea. So we would also most likely win 2-0. So that means that we also would win the silver most likely in women. So 2 silvers very likely if our fortune is really amazing, maybe a gold, but very unlikely. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you also sort of felt Gukesh's will to win, also Lee Jun Hyeok's tenacity, and this just goes to show that on a given day, any player can beat anyone if you are alert. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off.